Hello and welcome to World Konnect, our weekly world news magazine program. Let's start the ball rolling then with the focus of the show. 56 nations and groups vow to create a peaceful and stable international environment by reducing the evolving threat of nuclear and radiological terrorism and strengthening nuclear security at the 2016 Nuclear Summit in Washington. Brazil's President Dilma Rousseff is fighting for her and her party's political survival. The Workers' Party has ruled Brazil for 13 years. Pakistan promises stronger security and major crackdown on Islamist militants after the Easter bombing kills over 70 people in Lahore. United Nations promises to lift sanctions on Libya's $67 billion sovereign wealth fund if the UN-backed government regains control of the country. And Sadaf Rahimi is an Afghan woman who packs a punch in the land where the Taliban once ruthlessly murdered women. At the 4th Nuclear Security Summit in Washington, D.C., leaders made a commitment to shared goals of nuclear disarmament, nuclear non-proliferation and peaceful uses of nuclear energy, and they also reaffirmed the fundamental responsibility of states to maintain at all times effective security of all nuclear and other radioactive material under their control.
Proliferation, nuclear terrorism and increasing threat by Islamic State were the high points at the Nuclear Security Summit in Washington that saw participation by over 50 countries. The biannual summit that was proposed by US President Barack Obama back in 2009 discussed action plans to secure nuclear fuel stockpiles and radioactive material that could be used in a nuclear device or a dirty bomb. After lauding the efforts in removing deadly materials across South America and Europe, Obama also warned the world community of the threats of such weapons falling into wrong hands.
Global stocks of plutonium are growing. Nuclear arsenals are expanding in some countries with more small tactical nuclear weapons, which could be at greater risk of theft. And as a consequence, one of the central goals of this summit was how do we build on the work that has been done.
Obama announced at the summit that the Convention on the Physical Protection of Nuclear Material would take effect soon. The agreement had been in existence for decades, but it was only in the past few weeks that it got the approval of the required number, at least 2/3 of all signatory countries. The deal requires countries to implement more stringent methods to protect nuclear materials. At the end of the summit, the leaders reaffirmed their commitment to fight proliferation. Russian President Vladimir Putin did not attend the summit, seen as Moscow's unwillingness to be part of a gathering led by US. Pakistan Prime Minister also cancelled, giving it a miss after the deadly bombing in Lahore. Both the countries are nuclear armed.
April is a crucial month in the U.S. presidential race as the field narrows and Democrat and Republican frontrunners move into a position to stake claim to the party nomination. It's almost a done deal for Hillary Clinton, but the path is not so clear for Trump as yet.
It's April and the Democrats and the Republicans have still not decided their candidates for the November 8th U.S. presidential election. The Republican frontrunner continues to be Donald Trump, who with 736 delegates is still 501 short of the 1,237 needed for nomination. Democrat Hillary Clinton has 1,712 delegates and is also 671 short of 2,383 delegates required for her party nomination. Though both frontrunners are well ahead of their rivals, the fact that there are still 943 delegate votes available for the Republicans and 2,042 for the Democrats leaves second-place Ted Cruz and Bernie Sanders with arithmetic possibilities of making the nomination. For Trump, controversy has kept him in the news and increased his popularity. After his rivals and he abandoned a pledge to back the eventual party nominee, Trump's meeting on Thursday with Reince Priebus, the Republican National Committee head, assumes significance. Trump's strong views have drawn criticism and support. He believes NATO is obsolete, Saudi Arabia is too dependent on the United States, and Japan and South Korea may need to develop their own nuclear programs because the US security umbrella is too costly to maintain. The billionaire also said women should be punished for having abortions if the procedure is banned in the United States. He later withdrew the comments, saying doctors performing abortions should be held responsible. Abortion is a divisive issue in American politics, even after it was legalized by the US Supreme Court more than 40 years ago. Pro-life is the central plank of most conservative politicians. Democratic frontrunner Hillary Clinton cashed in on Trump's abortion remarks and other policy issues.
Donald Trump is showing us exactly who he is, and we should believe him. But let's remember this. All the Republican candidates want to make abortion illegal.
She reiterated her stances on education, student debt, job creation, marriage equality and national security, and her plan to defeat Islamic State. Her main rival Bernie Sanders used the stage in Wisconsin to also rebuke Trump, saying Americans would not make him president of the United States.
I do not believe that the American people will ever elect a president who virtually every single day is insulting one group of people or another.
Most poll pundits predict the race is ending for Bernie Sanders in April, but it's a crucial month for the Republicans. With 254 candidates up for grabs, April could well decide whether Trump finally wins the establishment support.
As Brazil prepares to host the Olympics in just 4 months, the nation is battling a political crisis. After Brazil's largest party, the PMDB, left the ruling coalition on Tuesday, President Dilma Rousseff is trying her best to negotiate with smaller parties so that she has enough votes to prevent her impeachment.
During the process that the whole of Latin America lived through in the 60s, 70s and 80s, the form of coup was a military intervention. Now it is a form of hidden coup behind apparent democratic processes. They use bits of democracy, but not democracy as a whole.
Embattled Brazilian President Dilma Rousseff is having a tough time these days. An ongoing political crisis, coupled with the country's worst recession in years, is for sure giving her sleepless nights. Rousseff's popularity graph has been on a decline for almost a year now. Already grappling to improve the health of Brazil's struggling economy, multiple corruption investigation and senior politicians and officials being jailed, there is a lot to bother the government. The president is also facing multiple impeachment efforts. One of the impeachment bids is for allegedly manipulating the budget to boost public spending in order to influence the 2014 elections. Dilma Rousseff denies all these allegations. The current storm of difficulties came with her appointing former President Lula da Silva as her cabinet chief of staff. Rousseff claimed that the appointment was meant to make use of Lula's expertise and skills in governance. The ex-president is facing investigation for alleged links in a major corruption scandal surrounding state oil company Petrobras. In Brazil, the government ministers have special privileges against a probe or trial. Many saw Lula's appointment as a bid to delay or prevent the trial against him. This led to massive protests in the country. The issue flared up so much that Dilma Rousseff's coalition partner and the country's biggest party, Brazilian Democratic Movement Party, abandoned her and asked its minister to resign. A fresh request for impeachment of Rousseff was also filed on the issue. Another impeachment plea filed by Brazil's Bar Association accuses the president of hurting the country's interests by granting FIFA a generous blanket tax exemption when it held the World Cup in Brazil. PMDB's decision has left Dilma Rousseff leading a minority government, increasing the risk of being impeached. Rousseff termed efforts to impeach her as a coup and vowed to continue to fight for social programs despite recession. But interestingly, Rousseff's coalition party did not ask her deputy and vice president Michael Temer to quit office, who also belongs to PMDB. In case Rousseff is impeached, Temer will be her successor. A number of pleas are in the queue for consideration by the Speaker of the House, Eduardo Cunha. A fierce critic of Rousseff, Cunha himself is facing corruption charges related to the Petrobras case. Amid the continuing political tussle, another shocker came for the government in the form of the resignation of the sports minister just a few months ahead of Olympics. With Dilma Rousseff struggling to save her presidency, her supporters have also taken to roads, calling the impeachment bids as unconstitutional.
Myanmar's pro-democracy icon Aung San Suu Kyi is set to get a PM-like role in the country that will circumvent a constitutional ban on her becoming president. Reports suggest that a bill for the purpose has been passed by the upper house of parliament. It now needs to get the lower house's nod as well as a presidential sign-off, which is no hurdle at all, with Suu Kyi's party enjoying majority in both houses. The new role is set to be of a state councillor with prime minister-like powers and position. The development comes days after the military junta handed over power to the new government. Myanmar's new president, Hitin Kaur, was also sworn in this week, and despite Suu Kyi's party sweeping the general elections with massive majority, she was barred from presidency as her sons have British citizenship, and Myanmar's constitution bars such persons from assuming the highest office. She is now set to take the new role and also most likely will head 4 cabinet posts, including Foreign Affairs, the President's Office, Education and Energy Ministries. Pakistan Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif has vowed to bring to justice the attackers of last week's terror strike that hit an Easter gathering, killing more than 70 and wounding hundreds. The suicide bomb blast hit a gathering during the Easter celebration at Gulshan-e-Iqbal Park in Lahore city, and investigators arrested several suspects and questioned thousands. A splinter group of the Pakistani Taliban, Jamaat-ul-Ahrar, has claimed responsibility for the attack, saying that Christians were their target. Prime Minister Sharif cancelled his visit to Washington as the country grieved the killings. Reports suggest that Pakistani military is preparing to launch a major offensive. Christians, who number about 2 million in the nation of 190 million people, have been the target of a series of attacks in recent years. Demands have been rising for protection post the Easter attack. The Easter bombing was Pakistan's deadliest attack since a 2014 school massacre in Peshawar claimed by the Taliban. 134 students were killed in that attack. In the search for better jobs, people migrate to cities, often leaving behind their children to be brought up by their grandparents. This has created a problem in Thailand, where the practice is very prevalent. Here, children brought up by their grandparents are seen to lag behind those brought up by their parents, leading experts to raise the alarm, saying there is a risk to the future generations.
Internal migration has been a cause of concern for all developing countries. In Thailand, however, the problem has created a void in the lives of young children. In search of work and livelihood, rural population of Thailand, especially in northeastern Thai region known as Isan, the parents move to the capital Bangkok, leaving their kids behind in the village. The children are brought up by their old grandparents who are burdened with additional responsibilities.
My children needed to move to work in Bangkok. They can't take their children to live with them. It's too expensive, so they send the kids to me.
The normal custom of taking the family along with them in a few years' time is not in practice here. As a result, around a third of the children in Isan are raised by their grandparents. Kids have exhibited remarkable differences from those being brought up by parents. They lag behind in schoolwork and also face psychological problems, as well as issues in physical health. The aged grandparents cannot match up to the attention and care of the parent. Experts feel that these kids lose out on creativity, confidence, and social skills, those which are well noticeable in children who stay with their parents.
They are quiet and will daydream, while the children who live with their parents are much more lively.
The parents do worry over the precious time lost with their little ones. Many get to see their kids hardly twice a year.
I miss my kids so much. I want to live with them, hug and kiss, play and hang out with them at home.
Though accepted and almost normalized by the Thai population, continuance of this practice poses a huge risk for future generations.
Belgian authorities have approved the extradition of Paris attacks suspect Saleh Abdeslam to France. Now, Abdeslam, the sole surviving suspect in the Paris attacks, was arrested in Brussels last month after 4 months on the run as Europe's most wanted man. Abdeslam's lawyer has said that his client will cooperate with the French authorities. Brussels airport is still recovering from the attack, which struck the capital 4 days after he was arrested, and the IS group bombings at the airport and a metro station carried out by the suicide attackers are linked to Abdeslam and the Paris attacks cell. UNHCR and other human rights organizations have raised strong concerns over the EU-Turkey pact on refugees. Meanwhile, the Greek parliament has also passed a law allowing migrants arriving into the country to be returned to Turkey. And Turkey will receive its first migrants returned from Greece after a pact was signed aimed at reducing migrant influx into the European Union. Under the scheme agreed with the EU last month, 1 Syrian refugee will be settled in Europe legally in return for every migrant taken back by Turkey from the EU member Greece. Now, Germany has said that it will take the first Syrian refugees in. The The United Nations is promising to lift sanctions on Libya's sovereign wealth fund if the government, which has UN support, manages to take control of the country. The fund is worth some $67 billion and has been restricted by sanctions since 2011. The problem is that the UN-supported government is confined to Tripoli's port area.
As United Nations-backed Presidential Council members arrived in Libyan capital, the new government vowed to establish a nationwide ceasefire and confront the threat of Islamic State militants. The members of new government reached Tripoli on Wednesday despite a threat from armed groups. Prime Minister Faiz Siraj said that the government has already begun the difficult work of rebuilding the war-torn country.
With God's help and with everyone's support, we will work to create a state with institutions and laws. With the participation of all Libyans, we will work for a ceasefire and end to the bloodshed across Libya.
The members of the council reached Tripoli from Tunisia amid tight security, defying attempts to keep them out and prevent them from installing a unity government. Tripoli is home to several armed groups, and conflict all across the region has plagued the nation since former dictator Muammar Gaddafi was toppled 5 years ago. The unity government emerged from a UN-mediated deal signed in December aimed at ending the country's political impasse. Western powers have recognized it as Libya's sole legitimate government, but it has faced opposition in both eastern and western Libya. Armed groups backing the self-declared local government had warned the council and the unity government not to travel to the capital. Meanwhile, support has also been pouring in for the new unity government. 10 key Libyan cities have extended their backing to the UN-backed council. The situation in Tripoli continues to remain volatile. Clashes erupted between supporters and opponents of the council soon after the members of council arrived. Since 2014, Libya has had two competing pairs of parliaments and governments, both backed by loose alliances of armed brigades. The government in Tripoli was brought to power by armed factions that won a battle for control of the capital in 2014.
South Africa's Constitutional Court has ordered President Jacob Zuma to pay back some of the $16 million of state money spent upgrading his private home. The top court ruled that Zuma violated the Constitution. President Zuma has denied any wrongdoing, and his office said that it respected the ruling and would determine the appropriate action in due course. And let's take a look at some more stories that are catching the attention elsewhere. Veteran filmmaker Woody Allen's Cafe Society will open the Cannes Film Festival of 2016. Allen opens the famed annual festival for the third time with his new release. His previous releases include The Hollywood Ending in 2002 and Midnight in Paris in 2011. The 69th Cannes Film Festival will run from May 11 to 22. Well-known British comedian Ronnie Corbett, best known for his role in the television hit The Two Ronnies, died on Thursday. He was 85. Corbett was awarded the OBE in 1978 and the CBE in 2012 to reward his services to the entertainment industry and to charity. The Beetle car may be extinct, but there are some places where the loved bug is still the preferred mode of transport, especially in hilly terrain. Here's a story about the car that defies the odds.
From the time it was introduced in the 1960s, Mexico's tryst with the Beetle has been a long and fun ride. The small hatchback lived up to its name of the people's car in the South American country where it became an instant hit. Popular with the taxi users as well, the last edition of the Beetle was built in 2003. Affectionately referred to as a Vocho, the Beetle taxis were a much too familiar sight in Mexico City. However, after environmental concerns were raised and more luxurious models made their way into the markets, the cars soon became extinct. Not entirely though. In Mexico's southwest, old Beetles are still the preferred mode of transport in Taxco. The old cars are best suited for the hilly terrains of the Silver City.
We drive Beetles because it's the one car that fits the topography of this city. The high hills, this Volkswagen model is the only one that responds to the topography in this city. It's, how can I put it, it's the king of Taxco.
And so, the once famous cars that rule the streets of Mexico still rule the streets of Taxco. The narrow and rugged lanes of the city, nestled between mountains, are a difficult ride indeed, and cruising through them is definitely not easy.
People tell us that we can drive anywhere in the world. That's what other people praise about us, that we are capable of driving in any other part of the world.
That's the story of the bug, considered outdated and non-functional in other areas of the country. It still finds a place in the picturesque city of Taxco and enjoys the status of king of the Silver City streets.
Boxing is a sport, but it also gives you the confidence to fight against the odd. This is the story of a woman boxer from Afghanistan who trains in the stadium where once the Taliban killed women with impunity.
In a society where women are struggling to acquire dignity and respect, 19-year-old Afghan Sadaf Rahimi does it with a punch. The boxer from Kabul trains in a stadium where the Taliban used to carry out executions. Now, Sadaf, with each punch, deals a blow to misogyny and gender stereotyping in a country which has not been too kind with its women in the past.
My aunt is still against my boxing career. She says girls are supposed to sit at home and take care of the family. But my response is that girls are not only to sit at home while they can compete with men and go abroad for competitions and bring medals to Afghanistan.
Fighting for her rights, literally and figuratively, the 19-year-old trains at the Ghazi Stadium in Kabul. Her inspiration to take up the sport in the country where women are not encouraged to flex muscles came from watching boxing greats like Mike Tyson and Laila Ali on TV. Training hard and winning some medals, participating in the Olympics is Sadaf's dream. However, she has to share the limited resources of Afghan Boxing Federation with other women in its ranks.
In the future, I want to be a famous boxer, train boxers and have my own boxing club. Since such grounds are not provided for me in Afghanistan as of now, I just want to be a good competitor.
If they were encouraged, I would guarantee you that Sadaf 100% would win medals for Olympics. But there is no encouragement for these girls. If we find gloves, we won't find boots and so on.
Sadaf is a brilliant boxer, and barring her societal barriers, her rise to represent women's sports in Afghanistan is highly commendable. She does not want to enjoy in personal glory alone. Sadaf wants to take a step forward. She wants to set up her own club and become a trainer in an effort to step up the sport among women. But before that, she aims to soon mount the podium in international competitions.
That's all in today's edition of World Konnect. Do send us your feedback. You can write to us. Our email ID is worldkonnect.ddnews@gmail.com. And you can also follow us on Facebook. But before we leave, here are some images of a rare cesarean-born baby gorilla taken to the enclosure for the first time. Thanks for watching.